Afternoon. Dwayne here, Dry Creek Wrangler School. Mom and I are fixing to hit the road in the morning and head up to the northwest, and I want to make one more video before we take off. I want to cover a subject. It's actually two subjects, but I'm going to put them together. It's something that I was asked quite a bit about this summer, and that's sheltering your horse during inclement weather and horse blankets in the wintertime. Now, it seems a little bit ironic to be talking about horse blankets and sheltering your horse when it's heat index of 105 out here in the middle of July. But if you kind of begin to get an understanding of the reasoning and the science behind it and can chew on it and study it, then maybe when winter starts coming and things start happening, you can have the knowledge you need to make an informed decision. Now, here he comes. He was over here eating, so I thought I'd come in here and make a video with him, and so he starts moving around. Let's talk about horse shelter. Now, I have Mal separated out in here at the moment, not for shelter. He's under shelter, but he's in here just because when I brought him here, he's kind of a dominant horse, and I was getting a lot of bites and kicks and fusses out there with the other horses, and we were in the middle of classes and I didn't need anything tore up. So probably here in the next day or two, I'm going to put him back out there. He's not going to be under this shelter. Now, people ask me, what do you do with your horses in inclement weather? What do you do with them in the summer during thunderstorms and heavy rains? I don't do anything. They're out in the pasture. They got trees to get under if they want. Do I bring them in the barn? I do not. Why? Because first off, it's not necessary, and secondarily, it's not. They don't want it. They don't prefer it. It's been my experience over the years that you can go out and build a shelter for the horses out in the pasture, and heavy rain come up, big thunderstorms come up, and they'll stand out in the rain. They won't go in the shelter. Now, sometimes in super heat, they may go to get away from the sun, but other than that, the horses, again, everything is what is natural for the horse, and the horse is a creature that is naturally claustrophobic, and they are an animal that they know that their meat, everything's trying to eat them. So their instinct says, stay out in the open, stay where I can see whatever's coming upon me, sneaking up on me, where I can run away. If I climb in that wooden box right there just because it's raining, then I'm vulnerable. And they won't anyhow. They won't go in. Even if you build it, most horses will not go into it. And they have the coat and they have the skin. They have what God gave them to prepare them to be out. Now, what about the winter time? Wintertime's the same way. In the winter, do I put my horses in the barn? I do not. Do I put them in shelter? I do not. At what temperature do I bring my horses in and put them in the barn? I don't. You got to remember, if you've been following on the channel, I've worked horses in Alaska. I had my own horses in Alaska. I've been out. We've had winters where we had snow as high as this top rail on this deal here. You know, and we've had 0, we've had 20 below weather. So what did I do? Well, number one, I kept them fed good. And number two, most importantly, it's not what I did, it's what I didn't do. Now, this is where some of y'all is going to part ways with me, and that's okay. I'm not telling you what to do, what not to do, okay? But the important thing to keep your horse comfortable in the weather, in the winter time, especially if you're in the north where the winters are strong, it's not what you do, it's what you don't do. And what you don't do? You don't put a blanket on them. All right? Now, I know some of you got your boarding stables, all right, back in the east and back in other places, and you've got your horses and you got their blankets and everything on them. But you know, you go out west where the winters are the worst, and you go to the people who work horses for a living, they don't blanket their horses. How is a ranch that has 30 or 40, and there's some ranches out there that have like 160 horses, How are they going to bring them all and put them in stalls and put blankets on all of them? They're not. What do? They feed them good and leave them out. How do the horses fare? The horses fare just fine. We need to understand something about the winter, about the coat, okay? So Mouse here has a summer coat on, and it's nice and slick and thin, all right? But what's going to happen is when summer starts ending and the days start getting shorter, his coat's going to start getting thicker. Now, contrary to what a lot of people think, the horse's coat does not change with the change in weather. You can't look at a horse's coat and say, man, they're furring up really early this year and they're getting a really thick, heavy coat, so it must be going to be a bad winter. That's not what happens. What happens is when the days start getting shorter and they start getting less and less sunlight, then the melatonin increases, and the melatonin starts growing out the winter coat. It's based on sunlight. It's not based on temperature, all right? That's why it can still be very warm and horses start getting their winter coat. And they'll get that heavy coat because as winter approaches, the daylight shortens, and so then their body starts releasing the hormone melatonin, which produces a coat. Now, your coat, when you put on a coat in cold weather, that coat does not warm you up. You need to understand the science of this, okay? A coat does not warm you up. You are warmed up by the body heat that you produce. Now, what a coat does is it holds that body heat in so it doesn't escape. All right, makes sense? That's why, and what it is about the insulation in the coat that holds the heat in is air. That's why down coats are so warm, because the hollows, depending on like goose down, there's hollow air pockets in the feathers, and there's air all in the feathers itself, and so that air is actually the insulation, and that's what holds the heat in. Well, you ever notice on a really cold day your horse is fuzzier than normal? They got a winter coat, but you go out on a really cold day and it's like their hair standing up. It's like they poofed out and they're fuzzier than normal. That's because on a really cold day, the hairs do stand up and it traps more air in there and they're even warmer. Okay? Now what happens when you take and put a blanket on that? When you put a blanket on that, it pushes the hair down. It pushes the hair down and stops the air from going in and insulating them. So the odds are, at times, your blanket is less warm than the actual coat is, and the blanket is hindering the natural work of the coat. Not only that, but the blanket will affect the growth of the coat, and they just don't need it. It's another one of those things. There's so much in the horse world today that is driven by marketing. Things that we don't need, things that you do not need, things that your horse does not need. But somebody out there wants to make a buck, and they're going to make a buck off of you. And your horse, now I'm talking about a normal, healthy horse. Now I know we have horses that get very elderly. I know we have mares that have just dropped a baby at inopportune times. We have horses that are ill. I understand that, but I'm talking about a normal, healthy horse. And maybe you've got a horse that like an Arabian that traditionally has very thin skin and a finer coat. There's situations out there, but a normal healthy horse, you say it's 20 below out there, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If they're being fed good and they are left alone and allowed to grow their natural winter coat, they're just fine. I was on a ranch in Kansas, and I had a little red dun mare of my own. And we had one of those Kansas ice storms come through. You know, the kind that completely coat tree branches and break them off, and there's power lines all down the road because they're sheathed in ice like that. And we had one of them ice storms come through. And I went out the next morning, went out to check on her, and she's standing there eating just like he is right now. Just like that. She was standing there eating, and she had a blanket of ice that thick up here, up her back, all the way up her mane, and she was standing there just soft-eyed, just eating. She looked at me, and I come out here and looked, and the steam was rising off of her. She was melting the ice from the bottom up. She was not cold. She was fine. Now I want you to understand what I'm saying, okay? And I just want you to consider and think about it, study it out. Sit down and think about what I'm saying. It's our human nature a lot of times when we take a very complex subject and we don't fully understand it deeply, our natural instinct is to do more. Because we have to try to cover up the places where we might not be, not cover up, fill in. Fill in the blanks of places that we may not fully understand. So we do more. We do more. Because maybe if we don't fully understand the nature of the horse, if we don't fully understand how the digestive system works, we don't understand how the coat works. He's like, you fuzzled with me enough, I'm leaving. If we don't fully understand how things work, our natural instinct is we got to do more. We give more supplements. We give more grains, and we give more alfalfas, and we put blankets on, and we put sheets on, and we put this on, and we add this, and we do that, and we fuzzle. And fuzzling is a sure sign of ignorance. Okay? So study it out. Don't take my word for it, all right? But your horse, if your horse is natural and comfortable in nature without your intervention, why do they need to be intervened, okay? Why do we need to go mess them and bring them in and put them in the barn and put a blanket on them and put a bunch of hot feed in front of them? Now, I understand that some of you show in the wintertime. Maybe you're running barrels, maybe you have show horses, you're doing stuff, and so you don't want that winter coat. And so if you're stepping in and artificially stopping that winter coat from growing, which they'll do that by turning lights on, grow lights on in the barn and stuff, so the melatonin don't kick in, then yeah, you're interfering with nature, and so you'll have to step in and substitute for nature. But don't tell me you're doing it for the horse. Don't tell me you're doing it for the horse. The horse is not impressed. The horse don't need it. The horse is not grateful. He's not thankful. The horse just wants to be left alone, and he would have done just fine without your show, without your rodeo, without your stall, without your blanket. The horse would have been just fine. So if you want to do this, understand you're doing this for yourself. If you bring the horse in and put him in the stall, you feel better about yourself. If you put all these blankets and all these neck blankets and all these wraps on his legs and everything, you're doing this for yourself. You're not doing it for the horse. And if you want to do that, that's fine. But do me a favor and stop spreading your false gospel. Okay, I get people come in here, they just want to trail ride, they just want to take care of the horses, and like, well, the people, they're insisting, they're demanding, I've got to put a blanket on my horse out in the pasture, I've got to do this. Just don't. All right, understand the science of it, understand the nature of it, and like I've said in so many videos, always ask why, and do the research to find out why. All right, so, I hope this helps, and if you like it, click like, subscribe if you haven't, hit that bell so you're notified when I put something else out. If you know of somebody who this might help, this video, hit that share button and send a link to them, let them look at it. And I'm not telling you don't blanket your horse. I'm not telling you don't put your horse in the barn. All right? But I'm telling you, like I tell you so many times on so many subjects, actually know the truth about why you're doing it. Okay? And do it from an honest place. Okay? All right. So this is Dwayne, and like everything else, be logical. Be reasonable, be safe, and have fun. And let your horse have fun too. We'll catch you next time.